now. I think it's
Right.
brilliant. There we
Okay.
go.
Thank you for joining. So the topic today is to look at process approval and publication. So what is it for, how to use it, and how does that work once a process is published. So the main purpose of publishing a process is to create a milestone that is the version of the process that will be open by default for all users. So I will do that as I'm talking. So now I have a blank process. So let's map a process of what we are doing. So I'm creating a couple of boxes. Okay, I'm creating a couple of boxes, and now what I'm done, I will approve the process. Okay, so this is the version I'm happy with the work I've done. And this is ideally the version that I'd like people to see first when they open this process. Even if I'm still keeping doing some work in the future on that. I will show you how the logic works. But this is what I would like users to see in the first place when they open this process. So what I'll do is I'll just create in the very simplest way. I'll create a published version of this process. So I take the last one. So this process has a lot of revisions of past things that we've done with it. But now I will just take the last revision that is here in my history list, and I will click publish. I will be myself the approver for now. It's simpler like that. And I could write a little comment. So this is demo Friday to show you where the message is going. I request the approval, and because I'm just the approver myself, I can just click now on approve immediately. And then I've created my approved published version. So not only it has the timestamps of the request, when the request was sent, when the request was approved, which is pretty much at the same time for now, it also has the comment telling me the comment that I wrote when I approved it. And we don't see that, but on top of that, I received an email saying that the process is approved. So it's an easy email that I can forward to my colleagues, saying, all right, this is the new process if you want to have a look at. So now that I have a published version, this is the version that will be open by default when someone opens the process. So if I'm going back to my workspace, we actually quite have a lot, so I will filter to find this process. Now I can see that I have a published version of my process. And when I open, this is the published version that opens automatically. Now, it doesn't mean that because it's published that I can't make changes anymore. So I will still be able to do some changes. So I go into edit mode and I will keep doing some change. So let's do something very simple, more changes. Okay, so I've created changes. It's different. I have additional boxes. I will go to view mode to just force a save of all these things. And to just really to show you this idea of the approved version, I'm going back to my workspace and I will simulate opening the process again from the workspace. And now we see that it still opens the approved version. All right, so this is the first benefit of approving a process, is that it's the version that will be opened by default to users.
So Colin, that means that any users who aren't editors or anything like that comes in, they'll see what was approved, not what the work you just recently did.
They can still see other revisions, but by default it will open the published version. So now in the top, instead of the edit button, we see latest edits, because I cannot really edit and start my editing session from this version. There might be more things, and we know that I've added a couple of boxes at the bottom of the diagram. So first I click see latest edits. And then I see that, all right, now I'm on the latest version and now I can start editing. So I will do that again, and then I will show you what happens in the revision. So I do, let me add just like more things. Okay, just adding more stuff so we see the changes over time. Going to view mode, and now let's have a look at the history, what happens. So in the history, I can see that I have my published version, which is still this one. And then on top of that, I have a draft, which is my latest version in this case. And then the more I edit, the more it will complete the list and create revisions again and again and again. Okay, but when a user lands on the process the first time, they will land on this published revision. So that's a system that allows you to have like this is what I want you to see when you first log in, but it also allows me to keep working on the process, make some changes, make some changes, improvements, whatever. And while the users are still seeing that. So we find that quite powerful. When I'm ready, I can always publish another revision. I can do a self-approval, but now for the sake of the exercise, you can select another user. You can say, all right, actually, I want someone else to approve this process on my behalf. And this case, this is the second case where the approval is quite interesting, is when you're working on customer projects. So this idea is that Skore can be used as a blueprint of a relationship or an implementation work or a change work that will be done between a team of consultants and a customer. And if you want really to say, all right, we need to mark that in the sand that this is the version of the process that we will implement, Mr. Customer. This is where selecting another user for the approval may be useful. You can pick any user in the system. So in terms of licensing, they just need to be in the system. They don't have to be an editor. And you can send them an email. So we probably have trace that I could pick. We can select any user in the workspace to approve the process. So the benefit is that I don't have access to Chris's email, so I won't be able to receive an email, but the user will receive a link with an email saying, all right, you need to approve this process. I will show you how it looks. I will just put myself as the approver and show you how it looks for them. So I will request the approval this time, but instead of approving it direct, I will just close it. Go back here. So now we can see you can approve this process. It recognizes that I am the approver of the process, that it's awaiting approval by me. So what I do is I will open the process, and then it shows that your approval is required. So if you're the approver, there's a lot of hints that directs you to what you need to do to approve this process. So this is the version now I will approve and publish. And it's now published. Doesn't refresh the screen, but let's have a look in the history. So now I can see that I have a new approved version. I have this original one that is now in status was published, and I have a new one in published. So it's very easy. It's not because a process is published that it's finished and you shouldn't work on it anymore. It's very easy to create new, to continue working on it as you would normally do, and publish new versions when you're ready for it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It's very clear.
Yeah.
I've got a question. So when you send the approval requests to another person, do they get an email notification?
Yes, they do. So they receive an email telling them, all right, Noogin has requested approval of this process. They can click on the link. It will direct them to the process, and then they can approve it.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is sending to someone else. The best scenario we've seen from users, and why we've created the feature, is really when there's like it creates a blueprint for implementation work. Because we all know when you implement technology, the scope can creep very, very easily. And oh, shall we add that? Shall we add that and that and that? So it allows you to create a version of the process where this is what we are implementing now. Then you can still keep working on the version 2, version 3, version 4 of the application or the workflow or the systems you're creating. But at least there's a trace of what is the version that we want to approve.
Oh, that's great, Colin. I'll just ask you a question to give the others a chance to come off mute if they want to ask anything. So that basically means that once you've published it, you can still go on editing. And the great thing is you're still editing the same, everyone's editing the same stage of the process. It's not like you're getting different trees of it, sort of thing.
Exactly. And this is why we really try to keep the system of approval very simple, is that now I can still make changes. I can still make changes to my process, more things again. and I'm just building on the same history essentially. So now we'll have a new revision with my new changes. So by default, the version that will be open for users is this one, but me as an editor, I can still working on improving my process and doing some changes, but users will still see the version I want them to see and not my latest work in progress or drafts.
Colin, I was thinking of using this, or this was just to get some feedback from you guys if this is correct. I used to assume that once I published it, yes, it's for view, but that's probably what I would use for saying, right, that's now the working copy. This is for workflow, and we would build to that. But in the spirit of continuous improvement, you would carry on from that point to continually improve their process, or
Exactly.
want to do that. And so you've got a complete history of where the process started and where you are now.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's good. I'm not being negative. I'm just telling you what.
Yeah, exactly. And we find that we are working on different dashboards and analytics in Skore. So keeping everything in the same process is great because you can see how often it was published and how often it was changed by whom. So we are creating sort of analytics that will help you see sort of the life cycle of a given process.
Yeah, it's very good from a compliance point of view.
Absolutely. So there are a couple of things where it's interesting is from a compliance, as well from a change management perspective, is there's a published version that users will use by default. The message is clear. You can still keep working on the process, continuous improvements, new ideas, or a new system, a new template that you want to use, and then you publish it and you notify all the users so that they don't see the changes constantly. Sometimes it's better that the change to a process is communicated properly, but with this feature, we can still work in Skore while all the users still see the same version.
Are there any other use cases that we should be aware of, or is this really? I mean, it kind of says what it does on the tin, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, it says. I think what we need to remember, as Steve says, is that it doesn't prevent you from working on your process. It just creates a version that users open. So it's good from a training point of view, so that when someone goes to a process, they see the same twice in a row. They don't see all the work in progress drafts. It's good from a compliance perspective to claim, compliance about telling what we do and doing what we say. So if there's a published version, it's much easier to demonstrate. And as well, it can act as a sort of a contractual between a client and a customer, or a service provider and a customer, by saying, all right, this is what we published, especially if you literally send the approval request to the actual customer to validate that.
Yeah, or I can see if you're a consultant and you're working with a client and you perhaps at the stage where you're giving your client only member, i.e. viewing rights rather than editing rights, you can control what version they're seeing, which is probably a good thing while you're doing a work in progress. It's not you're trying to hide anything from them. It's just that you may not be ready to show them all your work, but you want to show them the bit that you've reached perhaps in that workshop or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a question. Sorry. Hi, everyone. So I just want to ask, if the approver has edit rights, then you send them the approval request, then they go into the process and maybe change a few things or make a comment. Will they then be able to publish that version or approve that version, or will you have to resend them an approval request?
So I suppose that accounts for any changes made in between. I mean, it's an interesting point, isn't it? Because if you receive an approval request and in the meantime you or someone else makes more edits, is that the question?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. So what will happen if we simulate that on here? Let's say on revision 10, you ask the approval for what would be revision 10 in your scenario, and then they make some changes. So if they make some changes, actually it will create 11, 12, 13, 14, etc., etc. So what you can do is you cancel the request on revision 10 and you request again on the latest thing.
On the latest revision.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's assuming you want those changes, isn't it? You might not want them.
Exactly.
Okay.
Assuming that you're happy with the change, obviously.
Yeah. If you're not happy, you just approve that version.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Most of the scenarios I've seen when asking for approval is not it's not taking anyone by surprise. And when I heard customers using that with customers or internally, when they approve a process, they're usually quite sure that this is the version to approve, or they do that in a meeting with other people. So the goal is not to take anyone by surprise. It's really to create a milestone, to create a revision that everyone agrees is the right one, and then keep working on in the future.
Cool. Right. Well, Colin, thank you so much for that. That was really good and clear run through of that publishing process, which I do think is powerful, and I'm sure people will find really useful. Any final questions, or we'll close that topic and just move to any other things that people would like to raise while we've got a final sort of 10 minutes?
I'm all good on this. Thank you, Colin.
Thanks.